Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Healed and Chilled. And today we have yet another awesome and amazing, wonderful special guest. And you guys already know how I like to do it. I like for the guest to have control of the narrative. So, if you would, in your own words, from your own point of view, can you introduce yourself and we'll dive right into the interview?
Yes, my name is Kevin Palmieri. I am the founder and host of Next Level University, a global top 100 podcast. I'm pretty sure you had my co host and business partner on recently, but I'm somebody who essentially had the identity of I was just never going to be successful and I was never going to amount to anything. And that is something I've really had to work on overcoming, even as I've gotten more quote unquote successful.
Mm. Wow, that's pretty powerful. So, would you mind elaborating on how you started feeling that way and then how you were able to now be doing these interviews and be successful?
Yeah, I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27.
Oh,
So
wow.
obviously that plays a role in a young man's life. And that's something that I don't know if I ever really faced.
Mm,
We didn't have a lot of money growing up. And I decided pretty early in life, Yana, that I didn't want to go to college.
mm,
So all my friends went away to college and I stayed back and I got a job at a local gas station. That was my first big boy job. That was my first real job. And I think that's where the identity started to form because all of my friends were going away to college and they were meeting people and they were
mm,
getting smarter and they were getting degrees. And I felt like I was going to be the townie who just worked at this gas station for his entire life. I ended up leaving that job. I was a personal trainer. I was a truck driver. I worked at a hospital cleaning bathrooms overnight. It just, I felt like everywhere I went was a dead end.
mm.
So I think that reinforced the identity. Eventually, I got lucky to get a really good job in an industry called weatherization. So we would
Mm.
go into buildings and make them more energy efficient. That's the best way to explain it, the easiest way to explain it. And I went from making like $15 an hour to I think I made $50 an hour on my first job with this new
Oh,
company.
wow.
Big leap for me.
Mhm.
And I thought, okay, now I'm going to be successful. Now I will feel successful. Now I will feel worthy. Now all the stuff that I've been running from my entire life should just kind of dissolve.
Right.
So if you looked at me at this point, I'm in my early 20s, probably 23 or 24. I had this job. I had a girlfriend who was a model. I had a sports car. I had a new apartment. And to top it all off, Yana, I was competing in a bodybuilding show. So I was quite literally in the best shape I will ever be
Mm.
in. And I was the most miserable at the same time.
Yes.
So that was my first realization that external things don't necessarily fix internal things. That was my first awareness to that.
Absolutely. And I can totally relate. So I did go the more traditional route of college, but after I graduated, I had a really nice apartment, living in the city, all the things that you're supposed to have, good job, and I too was totally miserable. And then I kind of felt lied to because I had everything that society says, hey, if you have this, and this, you're going to be super happy. And I was not super happy. So I'm curious, how did you come to the realization that it's like the material aspect that is like obviously you need material goods to live a sustaining and a good life. So, but at the same time, there are other things that you need too, like the emotional stability, peace of mind. One
Yeah.
thing that started with me was all the things that I had not been addressing kind of start to surface once I got into that misery. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you're nodding. So, can you elaborate?
I would say the same. Yeah, same. So my girlfriend left me because I was so depressed and so anxious, and
Mm,
I was just a shell of the person I used to be.
mm.
Work got really slow right at the time she left me, and I had just finished my bodybuilding show, so I developed a little bit of an eating disorder. So
Oh,
quite
wow.
literally, it went from it looked like I had everything to me feeling like I had nothing.
Wow.
That was my initial kind of rock bottom.
Mm,
But to your point, I didn't learn the lesson yet. I thought, well, maybe I just haven't made enough money yet.
Mm,
Maybe I didn't cross the threshold. So I said, okay, this is the year I'm going to make the most money I've ever made. And I grinded my face off and I lived on the road for 10 months and I was traveling every single week and staying up and it was brutal. We got to the end of the year and I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree, which was like, oh my goodness.
yeah. Mm,
And I didn't feel any different. I literally did not feel any different internally.
oh, wow.
I remember thinking to myself, for most of my life, I've lived unconsciously.
Mm,
The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I did what any young man would do. Yeah, and I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. That's where all of this started for me. I realized that I had worked on my body as somebody who's been in the
mm,
gym for a long time, and that changes. And
mm,
certain exercises do certain things. What if I just did the same thing internally?
mm,
And that kind of began the process. I fell in love with podcasting and having deep conversations and talking about philosophy. Then I started to absolutely hate my job because I knew money wasn't the answer I thought it was. So
yes.
I finally felt like I found something that I could be passionate about and something that fulfilled me and something that mattered in this podcast. And I felt like my job was taking that away. So I start calling out of work. I start leaving early. I start showing up late,
Yes.
like all of the signs. And my mental
Hmm.
health was getting worse, and my depression was getting worse, and my anxiety was getting worse.
Hmm.
Eventually, I woke up one morning in a hotel room. I was traveling for work that week. Sat up, I slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots. And the best way to explain it is it felt like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time.
Mm,
Every single one is on a different station. One is saying you're stuck here forever.
mm,
We gotta rewind. Kev, you're not supposed to be successful. You're gonna be the loser. You're not
mm,
smart. You don't have many options. You're lucky. Don't mess this up.
mm,
If you ever left this job, what would your friends say? I make more
mm,
money than all my friends who went to school. Now I'm successful. What would my family say?
mm,
My family's proud of me. And then the loudest, maybe most obvious one was, you really think you're going to be a podcaster? Like
mm,
that's what we're doing. And it was in that moment where I thought to myself, well, if I was just to take my life, I would take all my problems with me.
mm,
That's where things really, I would say, became obvious that we were in a very downward spiral, and something had to shift pretty
yeah.
quickly. I reached out to my business partner, Alan, and we had a really good conversation. He gave me some really good perspective, and I ended up leaving my job 3 or 4 months later. And the reason I tell that story is because after I left my job, I burned through all the money I had saved pretty quickly.
Mm,
One day, I was walking around the kitchen and I was broke. Nobody cared about the podcast. Like, people were
mm,
making fun of us actively. And I was as single as a
mm,
human could be. I had no prospects of love. And honestly, nobody really wants to date a broke entrepreneur, so I understand. But I remember thinking to myself, I am actually proud.
mm,
I am fulfilled.
mm,
And I actually feel like we're doing something that matters. And that to me was a suggestion that, okay, I'm working on the inner part of me now, even though I don't have any of the external stuff. So I think it's a constant dance of, you work on something internal, you get external opportunities. The external opportunity scares the pants off of you, so you have to level up internally to do it,
yeah.
and then rinse and repeat that cycle. And that's how you grow holistically, internally and externally.
Very, very, very well said. And
Thank you.
I definitely appreciate your openness and vulnerability and honesty. If you don't mind, could you go a little bit deeper in like what that thought process of like, okay, I'm gonna quit my job, and then from there, how when you like got through the money, like how where were you at in that space, and then how did you overcome to get to where you are today?
So I'm somebody who takes action pretty quickly. So
Mm,
my business partner and I, well, he wasn't my business partner at the time. We had the conversation and he said, well, Kev, there's other things you can do. This doesn't have to be the end of the road. See how you feel tomorrow and we can kind of strategize.
mm,
That created hope for me that there was a light at the end of the tunnel that I couldn't see yet.
mm,
I started investing more time into the podcast. And eventually it got to the point where my work said I had to be somewhere at a certain time. I had a podcast event scheduled at that time. I said, I'm not coming. I'm done. That was me leaving. And then from there, I honestly think that I was so naive because it felt really cool to be an entrepreneur. I was just naive to what it was going to take.
Mm,
We really started working on us long before we started working on the business. So essentially, it would be okay, what do we want to talk about on the podcast? Who do we think our audience is? What are the skills that we need to develop? What book should I be reading? What habits should I be practicing? All personal development.
mm,
Then it got to the point where I was like, hey, I don't have any money. Like this is awesome, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this any longer because I can't pay rent at this point.
right,
So then we said, okay, well, if we wanted to make money with this podcast and turn it into a business, what would we do? We talk about personal development. It makes sense to coach people on personal development.
right.
So I reached out to 5 people that I knew listened to the podcast. And I just said something along the lines of, hey, Yana, I'm interested in doing some sort of coaching. I've never done it before. What do you think of me coaching you for 2 months completely free? No strings attached. And all 5 people said yes. Then at the end of the 2 months, I said, hey, I'd really like to do this and I'd like to dedicate more time to it. What do you think of $50 a call? And everybody said yes.
Mm,
So that was proof of concept that we could actually do something with this podcast. And then from there, it just kind of evolved and we learned more. But that took 2 years
mm,
of just grinding and trying to learn and imposter syndrome and not feeling good enough and not feeling smart enough. So
mm,
everything we've done is incremental.
mm,
And it just looks like we ended up where we are today because most people weren't there for the beginning of the ride, understandably so.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that the way that you spoke on it, because it is like those incremental steps. And a quote that always sticks with me, I don't know who said it, but little by little, a little becomes a lot. And I think it's easy for people to say, "Oh, well, look at where you are now. Like you don't know what struggle is like. You don't know what it feels like to be X, Y, and Z." And it's like, no, actually, that's not the case, actually, at all. And I like that what you mentioned about growth comes over time.
Yep.
So, when it comes to with the coaching aspect and what you do for your clients and for the community, can you speak about how your personal experiences have, sh- I guess, influenced the way that you coach and like how you work with your clientele?
Yeah, I think, and again, this is a bold statement, but I think I'm one of the rare people who is not a natural high performer who has been able to perform at a pretty high level.
Mm,
I'm an emotional human. I'm an emotional thinker. I'm a not naturally logical person. I operate on feelings and then I logic them after. I remember seeing certain people that were at the top of the industry and I remember thinking, you don't know what it's like to not believe in yourself. I can tell.
mm,
If the advice somebody gives you is, well, just believe in yourself more. That's terrible advice.
yeah,
Terrible. Or, oh, you're anxious? Well, just don't be. Oh, thank you.
right.
Yeah, thank you. I've never thought of that before.
Right.
So I think my experiences have helped me understand what it's like not to believe in myself. So when I work with somebody, I can actually go to where they are
Mm,
and I can empathize with that. And I can say, I'm not 100% sure what it's like to be you. And I do have some experience on this end of not believing in myself. So this is what I did and this is what helped me. I think it's easy for me to help somebody take very small action because I understand how small actions add up to big things.
mm,
And if you pair that with the fact that I am somebody who is so big on making sure everything is sustainable, I think taking massive action is drastically overrated
mm,
unless you have very high self belief, but most of us don't. I am somebody who is okay with saying to someone, hey, it's going to seem like you're almost not growing at all,
mm,
but trust me, when you realize you are growing, you'll be able to grow faster. That I think is a unique
mm.
thing that I have based on my lack of self belief, my lack of self worth, and not thinking I was going to amount to anything, honestly.
Mm. And another thing, very well said. I
Thank you.
think as entrepreneurs across the board, especially when you're just starting out, it's easy to see like what others are doing and be like, oh, well, I should be here and I should be there. But like you're really where you are, and even in terms of personal development and growth, it's like if you look at someone and you're not, like you said, not confident, then you can be like, well, where are they getting this from, and how is that working? And it's one of those things, like, because I am a children's confidence coach, so I understand that, it's a skill. You have to practice that. You have to practice being courageous. You have to practice growing. And just like anything else, our goals, we have to practice to get there. But sometimes people can be impatient. And so I like your philosophy where you're like, hey, look, you can get there eventually, but
Mm.
even the small steps they count. So can you walk us through, was this something you always knew, or did you kind of learn this as time went on? And then how can you translate that to your clients?
No, I did. This is not something I always knew. I remember somebody telling me to read a book, and I remember thinking, I don't, why? Like, what's the point? What is the
Mhm,
point? I literally didn't understand the importance of learning because it didn't make any sense.
mhm,
I I think I learned this through experience because I was somebody who I just tried to keep showing up
mhm,
and tried to do a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And if anything, I am just a representation of what can happen when you do something long enough.
mm.
So I think I learned by doing. So this is, I think, my 3,500th podcast episode.
Sheesh.
But if I look confident at all, or if I have good equipment or whatever, that's just because I've done this so many times.
Mm,
My journey and our podcast is a really good example of what can happen if you just put one foot in front of the other for a long enough period of time. So, no, I think I did this because this is what it felt like I had to do in order to survive this journey.
mm,
Then the other piece of it, and you talked to Alan,
mm,
my business partner is completely different than I am. He
mhm.
he is the guy who just takes massive action and has unbelievably high self-belief. So we have driven to 5 where he's a 10 and I'm a 0. We've met in the middle and I've been able to practice some of his strengths and he's been able to practice some of my strengths. And if we do really want to help people, we have to understand that not all people are on his end.
Right.
And statistically speaking, more people probably start with lower self belief than high self belief. So
Mhm,
we saw that when we started working with people. So yeah, it started with me understanding this from my own journey and then working with people understanding, oh my goodness, you claim to have very high self belief because you think you're supposed to say that. But when I tell you I have lower self belief, you feel comfortable telling me that. Now we can actually get down to the root of what's real and then we can actually make meaningful progress from that.
absolutely. And I can say after talking to both of you that I can see the passion, across the board, and just that you guys are really, in sync with what you're doing. So, I have some more questions, but is there anything that you wanted to highlight specifically, that you haven't yet had the opportunity to talk about?
No, not really. I'm
Okay.
I'm I'm low maintenance, free flowing. I love having deep conversations, but yeah, no, I there's a quote that I like to say that's very similar to the one that you put out there. I think I created this, but somebody probably over the course of time has said these words in this specific order. From day to day, progress is invisible.
Mm,
From month to month, year to year, decade to decade, progress is impossible to miss. That, that.
mm,
I'm going to do this episode with you. I'm going to do a bunch of episodes tomorrow. Tomorrow, I will be no better measurably than I am today. But if I come back a year from today and listen to this episode, I hope to be better than I
yeah.
am. I think that's something that has helped me tremendously that maybe can help somebody else as well.
Yeah, would you mind saying that again?
Sure.
Just okay.
From day to day, progress is invisible.
Mhm.
From month to month, year to year, decade to decade, however far you want to go out, progress is impossible to miss, both positive and negative.
Mm.
You skip the gym today, doesn't really matter. You go to the gym today, doesn't really matter. You do the same thing for the next year, it matters a lot.
Yeah, that's actually really, really on point. And it reminds me of another quote that I recently heard. And I recently heard this, so I might get it wrong, but something about re taking another look at the long-term ramifications of things. So like by 10, 10, 10, what difference will it make in 10 minutes versus 10 days versus 10 years?
Mm.
And thinking more so in the long-term aspect of like, this is in 10 years, how will this particular action impact me versus if I don't do it over and over again? So, can you walk us through a little bit of how you got to that concept? Because I think it is so important, especially with understanding the incremental steps. And then just to add, a lot of times I notice that people will be impatient with ourselves because you're like, well, I thought I was gonna be done with my temper problem already, and it's like, well, however many years you were alive, you had that many years to get here.
Mhm.
So it's going to take more than today, but everyone wants quick results. We have TikTok, we have microwaves, like everything's fast, fast, fast. So how do you come in still with the, hey, I understand it's typically fast. At least that's what society will tell you, but in reality, that's not the case.
Yeah, I learned this because when we got to like our 500th episode, I went back and looked at the old like early episodes and I was terrible.
Mm,
And people thought I was really good, and myself included. I thought I was pretty good 500 episodes in. When we got to 1,000 episodes, I went back and looked at 500 and it was terrible. So the
mm,
same thing happened. I thought I was good at 500 until I got to 1,000. Then
mm,
when we get to 1,500, I go back and look and I thought I was good until you get to that point. So I can't tell you a single episode that I've ever recorded where I got better, where I went from 0 to 1,
mm,
because everyone was like just a little bit. It was just a little, it was a drop in the bucket, a drop in the bucket, a drop in the bucket. So I would say my podcasting journey is what really helped me understand this. We recorded our 2000th episode. I went back and looked at 1000. I was
mm,
terrible, Yana. I was terrible compared to where I am
mm,
today. Now, this is my new saying. I am the best I've ever been, but also the worst I'll ever be again,
mm.
because I'm going to keep going. Right? I'm going
Yep.
to I'm going to keep going. So that
Mhm,
is the process of how I really started to understand this. That was really really helpful for me. And honestly, I go into working with clients trying to convince them that it'll probably be worse than it is.
mm,
I'm not the guy who does it the other way. Oh, yeah, no, this is going to be great. In 3 months, everything's going to be different. No, if anything, give me 2 years.
mm,
Give me two. Oh, you're a podcaster? Awesome. Give me 2 years. Oh, you want this to happen? Awesome. Give me 2 years. I, in a weird way, I don't necessarily care about people's goals anymore. I care more about the lifestyle you're willing to live until you get them.
mm,
Because that's the difference. Everybody has goals. And everybody thinks they want that goal until somebody says, all right, cool. This is the prescription. This is what you got to do. You got to do this, this, this. I would much rather go to someone and say, okay, Yana, you want to have a successful podcast. Awesome. What are you willing to create your life around in order to make that happen? Let's start there.
mm.
So that's been something that's been really helpful for me, because a lot of people will say, well, I want to be where you are. Thank
Right.
you. I appreciate that. And if I gave you the keys to the kingdom, I'm telling you, you'd give the keys back, because
Mm,
it's just not what you think it is behind the scenes. So it's a very complicated thought process where in order to get the goal, you must shift your lifestyle.
mhm,
If the shift in your lifestyle is unsustainable, therefore the goal is unsustainable too. So why don't we focus on setting a more sustainable goal that actually aligns with the life that you're trying to live? That's really my new perspective.
mm. Would you mind elaborating a little bit more? Because I think it definitely makes sense, but I think it's definitely worth diving into a little bit
Mm.
about the lifestyle that is required for whatever. Because I have noticed even with myself, sometimes I'm like, "Ooh, I want this thing versus that thing." And then once I get it, I'm like, I don't really like this thing. And
Yeah.
then you go over here, try it. It's like, okay, I like this thing, but not in this way. So having to make those shifts. So would you mind elaborating a little bit more on the lifestyle change and then also why you focus on that rather than the goals themselves?
Of course. I had a call with somebody one time. He was a podcaster. And he said, I want to have a podcast and I want to be way, way, way more successful than you guys are. It's like, okay, love it.
Okay.
Love that
Hmm.
for you. And I said, let me just check in and let's talk about what you value as a human being.
Mm.
I said, on a scale of 0 to 10, how important is it for you to eat dinner with your partner every night? And he said, 10 out of 10. Cool. On a scale of 0 to 10, how important is it for you to get your kids off the bus, to be at their recitals, to be at parent teacher conference, to know what your schedule is, to have financial stability, all of that stuff? And he said, oh, those are all super high. Awesome. This ain't for you. This is
Mm.
not for you. You're not going to get your kids off the bus every day. You're going to be on podcasts, or you're going to be a guest on a podcast, or you're going to be traveling. There are going to be sacrifices that you are going to have to make in order to get to where you want to get to
Right.
that you might regret making.
Mm.
So the reason I approach it from that perspective is I'm convinced one of the reasons the hustle culture was so negative for a lot of people is they didn't understand what their lives were going to look like.
Mm.
If I sat someone down and said, hey, I work 60 hours a week
Hmm.
every single week. Some nights I work from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. Oftentimes I eat dinner at 8 o'clock and then I go to bed at 9 o'clock. I don't get enough sleep sometimes because I have to wake up and work. Do you want that?
Mm.
I don't go to cookouts. I don't really spend that. Like, I have dedicated my life to making this thing work. Is that what you want? If not, no shame. I'm not going to make you feel bad for it. Honestly, I think a good coach helps you. I think a good coach helps you accomplish your goals. I think a great coach helps you avoid regret in accomplishing the goals you actually want to.
Mm.
So that's really my thesis. Based on my awareness of what it's taken to get here, I can tell you how much you might have to sacrifice. If I can save you regret in advance, I would rather you take that journey anyway. So that's kind of the thesis
Mm.
behind it, at least.
Yes, 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 yes. And because there's not many people that I've spoken to that are so honest with the reality of life, because it's easy to say everybody wants a business, everybody wants something. Everybody has a dream, but the reality of getting that, it's like you get so wrapped up into, oh, look at what this could be, that
Mm,
it's almost like rose-colored glasses. And you have to really take a reality check and say, hey, wait a minute. Like, this is what I want, but this is also what I want. And like, is this the right path? And I think you're the first person that I've spoken to that has ever said it like that. So just kudos to you for,
I appreciate
being
it.
honest.
I appreciate. I just wish I knew. I
Right.
I wish everybody's marketing is I will help you accomplish this giant thing easy.
Yes.
And I've never it doesn't really work that way. I've worked with
No.
so many people. I've been around very successful people. It doesn't, yeah, the way you market stuff, I've never gotten a Big Mac that looks like it does in the commercials. I know that's how you market stuff, but I don't know. That has always really made me sad that people are saying, oh, I can help you accomplish this with almost no effort.
Right.
You can't. Almost nobody can. Can I help you be a way more successful podcaster? Sure. Can I do it without any of your effort? Absolutely not. No. No,
Right.
and that would just be a lie to say that. So I appreciate that. That's we try to be as honest as we can because I think what happens for a lot of people is their their desires become their expectations. So
Yes.
the desire is this is going to be super easy. Then your
Yes.
expectation becomes this is going to be super easy. Just because you desire it to be easy does not mean it's going to be. And I think that's an important piece.
Yeah, I another one I've not heard before, but that is so, so, so accurate. And I think the more people that understand that and really resonate with that, the better, just because everything does seem like, oh, if I just do it like this, then watch it'll bippity boppity boop, and then all this stuff will happen. And eventually, it does once enough drops in the bucket, it
Mhm.
will overflow. But one thing that you also mentioned is after that overflow, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're at the beach forever at that
Mm-mm.
point. And in fact, oh, based on how you're moving, it might be even more. So can you elaborate on that? And then how do you not get drained as well? Because I know for people, especially in that transition period, like let's say you're still working and pursuing the dream, it's easy to get drained at the job portion. So, how do you do that? And then once you get to that tipping point, it seems like it gets more challenging than
Yes.
before. So, go ahead.
I would say this is where really, really dialing in your habits matters. So, getting consistent sleep. I know it's not fun. I know it kind of stinks to say, well, it's 9 o'clock. I got to go to bed. That is the key to sustaining high performance. That is a massive key. That's one.
Mm,
Making sure you drink enough water, making sure you eat nutritious meals, making sure you move your body and you exercise, doing all of the stuff that is required for basic human upkeep at a higher level is one of the reasons or one of the ways you can be more consistent and be more of a high performer. Do I burn out? Not really, but I'm also at this point very aware of what it feels like when it starts to come on.
mm,
So I'm privileged where I can make my own schedule and this is my full-time job. So that's a piece of it. But simplest answer, you got to put yourself first. You got to put yourself first and you have to take care of yourself and you have to sleep and you have to set boundaries and you have to treat yourself as the main piece of this future business because that's what it is. And then yeah, I one, let's say you leave your job and you now become a full-time entrepreneur. Amazing, awesome, I love it. And you have a lot of time and you have very little direction currently. So you really have to dial in, okay, what am I going to do with all of this time?
hmm.
Time without discipline makes you feel stuck. So
Yeah.
we got to dial that in. And then the hard part about this is when okay, let's say you do this full time, you find your thing, awesome. Now, when you get to level one of success, you have to do all of the things that got you to level one while you pursue level two.
Mm,
When you get to level two, you got to do all the things that it took to get from level one to level two to stay at level two, now to get to level three. And I am convinced a certain piece, maintaining and sustaining success is harder than getting it in the first place
mm,
because you lose a lot of the feel good. Oh my goodness, I made it. And now I have to continue going to make it more and more and more. So I don't think there is a fairy tale land where you get all of the results with less effort unless you decide, okay, cool, I'm happy where I am. And then you can stop putting in effort. You can try to ride the wave you've created. But for as long as you're climbing, you're always going to have to carry the stuff that you've accumulated up to this point.
mm. Yes, another very well
Thank
said,
you.
man. And yeah, I think that that's another a great way to look at it because we've not been across that threshold yet. You don't think about, oh well, you do have to, well, who's gonna do this if you're doing
Mhm.
that? And then who's gonna do that if you're doing this? So that elevation process, it does get harder as you grow and develop. So it sounds like the best thing for people who are like starting out is to build some sort of consistency, build a plan, stay on top of that first, and then okay, maybe, add to things, but don't just jump off the deep end like,
Mm-mm.
"Hey, I'm drained, so I'm going to leave my job and I'm just
No,
going to jump."
no. That sounds really cool when I say that, but don't do that.
Mhm,
I think of it as reallocating time. So let's say right now you have 100% in your 9 to 5 and 0% into your passion.
mhm,
In the beginning, you're going to have to put 100% into your 9 to 5 and then nights and weekends into your passion.
mhm,
Get proof of concept, learn, see what it's like, see what the process is. And then eventually, as you're able to build momentum, work in monetization, make profit, then maybe you can do 80% 9 to 5, 20% passion, 70% 9 to 5, 30% passion. Eventually, hopefully, you get to the place where there's enough drops in the passion bucket where you can then do it full time. But
Mhm,
it is an incremental process for most people. And again, while it sounds amazing to say I left my job and I went all in on this, I couldn't afford to pay rent. My car was broken. I got sent to collections. I
mhm,
couldn't buy my now wife Christmas presents. I mean, it wasn't good, right?
mhm.
It wasn't good, but it sounds good, but it wasn't good.
Well, and I appreciate your authenticity and
Of course.
honesty on that. We are coming up on the tail end. I do have some cliche questions that I
Oh, I love
ask
cliche
everybody.
questions.
But before that, and you might not, but is there anything that you're like, oh, like now, oh, I wish I said this, or I wanted to speak about this, and you didn't have the opportunity to do so?
The reason the quote unquote failure rate in so many of the things that we want to try is so high is because there's a lot of people that think it's going to be easier than it is, right?
Mm,
The business failure rate, if it's, let's just say it's 9 out of 10 businesses fail. The reason most likely is it's not because they didn't love it, it's not because they didn't want it necessarily. It's because it was different than they thought it was going to be.
mhm,
So I think just going in with humility and saying, "Look, I don't know what's going to happen here, but it most likely is going to be different than I expected." It is, right? Next time you go to a restaurant, imagine exactly what the restaurant is going to be like. And then when you get there, jot down all the things that were what you expected and all the things that weren't. I'm willing to
mhm.
bet more will be what you didn't expect. That's something I try to do. It keeps me accurate. So, yeah, I would just throw that out there for whatever that's worth.
Absolutely. Alrighty. So, time for my cliche questions.
Okay.
So, the first one is if you could think of a time when you were younger and in a dark space, what is one piece of advice that you know now that you really wish you would have known back then?
Ooh, don't make long term decisions based on short term emotions.
Mm,
That. And again, easier said than done, but I
yes.
understand that now. Back then, it was high school was the end of the world. Something
Yes.
happened in high school, it was the end of the world. Now looking back, it's like, oh my goodness, that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, that reminds me of when I was a cheerleader in high school, and the biggest thing was getting the back handspring. And
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't get that, I felt like the whole world was crashing. And
Yep.
now it's like, okay. And I feel like as we grow and develop, there's more of those moments where it's like, oh, that really wasn't that big of a deal
Yes.
as it is now.
Yes.
Um, Second cliche question is the internet works in very mysterious ways, so we never know who's going to listen to this at any point in time. Is there any person or organization or people in general that you would really like to connect with or work with in any capacity that if they heard it, you're like, oh, reach out to me?
I've always had the dream to like eventually make a martial arts gym, not
Oh, wow.
necessarily just for women, but like
Oh,
so women
yes.
could learn self defense in a warm, safe environment. So yeah, whatever community that is, I would love that.
I would love that too. So there's a will, there's a way somehow. And so my last question, of course, is if anybody wants to work with you, of course, I'll put the links and things in the description. But if anybody wants to work with you specifically or learn more, keep in touch or with the podcast and things, how would they do that?
So the podcast is called Next Level University. It's on all the platforms. It's on YouTube. We do an episode every day. And then the website is nextleveluniverse.com. And if you need anything, my email is kevin@nextleveluniverse.com. I'm happy to answer any questions you got. Whatever I can do to add value, I'm just an email away.
Absolutely. And this was such an amazing conversation. I'm going to give you a signature round of applause.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I definitely took a lot away from this conversation, and I know that a lot of other people will as well. And I'm sending you so much positive energy, so many great things in the future. And as you continue to expand, and you're always welcome back. And I'm just thankful that you were able to come on and share some time with me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much, Yana.
Absolutely.